Hi, this is Roger G. My wife Lynn and I just completed a Russian rivers cruise from Moscow to St. Petersburg aboard the MS Rossiya. When we arrived in Moscow, we were greeted with a Russian custom of bread to break, which we would dip in salt. The very next morning, we took our first Moscow tour. We saw the tomb of the unknown soldier, guarded by this man right here, and we also saw the two-headed eagle, which is the symbol for Russia. We proceeded on to Red Square. We thought it would be a parade ground like Hitler had, but this turned out to be something entirely different. Behind us is the Museum of the Square. The Kremlin over here is on the left-hand side. Over here is GUM department store. And there were also several churches around the square. One of the churches was St. Basil's Cathedral. What a beautiful church. And here's the symbol for GUM department store. We went into that store and we were just amazed at what it looked like inside. Then we took a tour of the Moscow subways, and we were just amazed at the work that was done on some of these subway stations. And this was done in the Stalin era. We have statues here and then this beautiful fresco painting right here. And then we went to lunch at a restaurant called Moo, and you can see the moo cow right there. And then outside of several restaurants, they have a Russian bear. So our friend Laqueta decided to look in the mouth and tell the bear to say, ah. On the second Moscow tour, we were along the Moscow River. We saw a lot of new office buildings. Also, we saw a very fancy hotel. If we remember correctly, it is the Four Seasons Hotel now. Then we went on to look at the Cathedral of Christ the Savior. This is a postcard right here because the sun was shining in the wrong direction when we got to it. And this thing here was really funny. Peter Columbus. It was made to be purchased by the United States, but the United States didn't want it. And the head on this character was of Christopher Columbus. And this building right here is referred to as the Gray Kremlin, and many of the residents during the Stalin era sort of disappeared in the middle of the night. They were probably murdered or sent off to some labor camp. I think this was a nunnery over here. And then this is a statue of Stalin's wife that was in the cemetery. And then we went on to see the Moscow State University. And then from the location we were at, we could see downtown Moscow. That night we went to the Moscow Circus. And this right here is what the front of the building looked like. And this is what the circus inside looked like from the seat where I was. And these are a couple of acts that we particularly enjoyed. The next day we went on a Kremlin visit, and Kremlin means fortress. And so here we are coming in through one of the passageways of the fortress, and here I am pointing to the second floor of the office building where Putin has his office. And here's my wife, Diane, and Laqueta in front of this huge cannon. And this is supposed to be the world's largest bell, but was never rung because it cracked. We were surprised to see these two churches inside the Kremlin. That night we went on to see the Russian National Dance Show, and they had beautiful costumes from the various countries associated with Russia. Okay, the next day we crossed over this marriage bridge. We had a bride and a groom, and the groom has a lock in his hand. When they lock the lock on this marriage bridge, their marriage will last. Then we went on to the Tretyakov Gallery, And this is a gallery of Russian art, and I swear I never have seen any of those paintings before. I particularly like this one of Christ visiting the people. This is a lady on a horseback. This is Sophia, who's a bit angry because she's been under house arrest for a year. And then this is a young girl with the peaches. Then we left Moscow and went along the Moscow River for a while, and I could have sworn that we were in Minnesota. These are activities that we would see here in the United States. Our first stop was Uglich, and we did a walking tour there around their Kremlin. Here's my wife looking at a lacquer box, and the retail price on that was going to be $4,875 US. Ouch! Here is Victoria, our program director, in a native costume, and this sextet, oh, they had beautiful voices. This is a fellow who is trying to flip a Bellini, and by the looks of our hostess there, I don't know that that was going to be successful. And these are the two musicians that we had aboard ship. This gal here was playing the Domra. And here we are at the captain's cocktail party. This is Victoria, our program director, and me, and Lynn, and Laqueta, and Diane. And this is Roma, our server, and her name was Valya. She was our other server. Then we went through a monastery in Goritsy. This was our local guide there, and he was so funny, and his English was just perfect. Back on the river ship, we tried painting some nesting dolls with very limited success. And then that night, we had an amateur theater, and we passengers were the characters in this Russian fairy tale, and Victoria was sort of the director of our play. The next day, we were at Kizhi Island, and this right here was the top of the winter church. This is the summer church, and this is the house that people lived in. This was a chapel, and then this is a sauna that was amazingly like the sauna one of my aunts used to have. And here are some icons inside the winter church. And then here's a couple of scenes inside the house, and we thought this was really interesting. The mother would take an article of her clothing and put it around the baby's bed so the baby could smell the mother. The baby felt more secure that way. And this right here is the oven, and up here, the grandparent could sleep above the oven. And then we moved on to another town. Don't ask me to pronounce it. And this is the wedding palace in town. Two couples who were getting married showed up, and we were able to take their pictures. Then we went on to see some girls who learned how to do some of the Russian and Finnish folk dances. Here they are teaching some of our group those dances. And then we, in turn, taught them how to do the hokey pokey. And that was a lot of fun. Then we did some shopping in a local store. So here's our members buying chocolate, and this is buying some bread. That night we went to a folk show, and so they dressed up in native costumes, and they also played an unusual instrument. This thing right here is called a cantella. Never heard of it before. This is our home host day. This granddaughter right here sang us a Russian song that she learned in kindergarten. The husband, who was an engineer in the hydroelectric project, and the wife delivered babies. This is their house and garden. Okay, this is our first St. Petersburg tour. Now, when we were in St. Petersburg 23 years ago, we might have seen only 5 cars. We're looking at a traffic jam right here. And this is the Smolny Nunnery. I had to get a postcard here because we were shooting into the sun and I didn't get a good regular picture. This right here is the absolute center of town. And then over here, this is the Cathedral of the Spilled Blood. And this is one of the canal boats that we were going to take later on. We went on to see the Peter Paul Fortress. Here it is from across the river. And we toured the church that was in the fortress. And here's some scenes from within the church. What a beautiful chandelier that they had right there. Then that afternoon we went on the Peterhof tour. That was like the Versailles of Russia. It was just a beautiful place. But you can tell here we're shooting into the sun, and so we didn't get quite as good of pictures as we'd hoped. These turned out pretty well, though. Okay, our second tour included stopping by the Aurora, and the shot fired from this battleship was signaled the start of the Russian Revolution in 1917. Then we went on to St. Isaac's Cathedral, and the inside here was absolutely beautiful. And what was unusual is this stained glass window, because Russian cathedrals don't normally have stained glass windows. In the afternoon, we visited the Hermitage. And the last time we were here 23 years ago, there were the two buses from the ship. Those were the only people in the Hermitage to start with. And look at the people. And this is the throne room that we didn't see 23 years ago. But I think we went along this corridor right here. And then I just included some of my favorite art pieces that we saw. Now, it would take us 7 years to see all the artwork that's in the Hermitage. Look at the size of this vase. It's supposed to be the largest vase in the world. And here's our program director and Ginger. They're comforting a boy who's got separated from his family. The Catherine Palace tour I did not go in because I was sick. So these are based on postcards. The Amber Room was also a postcard. Here are Diane, Laqueta, and Lynn returning. We did go to the Russian ballet that night, so whatever I had was short term. We're all dressed up for the ballet. This is it right here. Ballet was absolutely beautiful. The costumes were gorgeous. What a great experience. This is the inside. We're not allowed to photograph the ballet, so this is about the only thing I got here. We saw Swan Lake. The next day, we took the Yusupov Palace tour, and this is a stairway going into the palace. Here's the head of the family and members of the family right here. Here's a couple of scenes enacting the murder of Rasputin. Then the last thing we did is take a canal boat ride. Let's see, we saw some of the 42 islands that make up St. Petersburg, and we went under a few of the 300 bridges. And so we had a great time crushing our dated ideas about Russia.